Arkansas and Oklahoma State, a big matchup is underway coming up this upcoming Saturday. And the guy that's going to be headed there is going to be your color analyst for this upcoming weekend is ESPN's college football analyst, Dusty Dvoracek, former All-American for the Oklahoma Sooners. Dusty, thank you for taking the time to come talk with us here on SEC Unfiltered, my man. How are you?
I'm fantastic and improving, man. College football season in full swing. Tuscaloosa last week. Stillwater with the Hogs coming to town this week, man. It feels good to be covering some of these SEC squads, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And your former alum, Oklahoma, making its entrance, so we want to welcome you guys in with open arms, and we're excited for the future of what's to come with you guys. And I know that you guys got a tough test ahead of you, especially with Tennessee coming up in a couple weeks, but offensive line wise, y'all be all right, especially on that interior. So yeah, man, let's just get into this right now. I know that we're former defensive linemen. We talked before we started the recording. Talk to me about some of the top defensive linemen that you saw from over the weekend. We saw a little bit of James Pierce, who only played about 10 snaps, about the same from Landon Jackson. But how about South Carolina's defensive line group?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think James Pierce is the best pass rusher in the country coming into the season. And, you know, I think going into this matchup with NC State, I can't wait to see him unleashed. And I think that I like the defensive tackles inside. They got bulk. They got veteran presence. And I think that whole front for Josh Heupel is going to be an absolute problem for people. So that's the matchup I'm really looking forward to. Grayson McCall at NC State. You know, he had some issues, as that entire NC State squad did against Western Carolina. And I think potential more issues on the horizon with what Tennessee is going to present. You know, you mentioned Landon Jackson. I had their game against Bama last year where he just went nuts. I mean, he was virtually unblockable. And you didn't learn much from Arkansas Pine Bluff. You're going to learn a lot against this Oklahoma State offensive line, the most veteran offensive line in all of college football. They've got 215 combined starts. So, but they're going to have their hands full. That old front was, I thought, with the size, quickness, the way they moved around, I was impressed with what I saw from them on film. I have not had a chance to watch South Carolina Old Dominion yet, so I did not dive into that tape. I was in Tuscaloosa last week, and I was impressed with what I saw from that defensive front. Kane Womack, you know, I know that he's kind of retooling that defense, especially in the secondary, but they've got some nice big guys up front. And I thought that overall Alabama up front looked really good. Tim Keenan, Tim Smith. I mean, those guys, I thought, you know, inside at D-tackle in particular, I thought those guys really played well, and they're going to be a handful for a lot of offensive lines this year.
Yeah, I know you probably haven't watched a little bit of South Carolina. I got a little opportunity to watch some film of them. Dylan Stewart's a dog. Guy's a true freshman, and this dude is fast off the edge. He doesn't play like a typical down tech, 5-tech defensive lineman. When you look at his first step, I mean, as soon as the ball is snapped, he's already 2 or 3 steps ahead before that offensive lineman is taking his initial whole pass pro block. And as soon as his hands go up, I mean, Stewart's just immediately chopping, ripping. His technique is phenomenal for a guy for his size and for his classification. He had a heck of a game. Him and Kyle Kennard are probably the 2 best edge rushers so far that nobody's really talking about in the SEC, and there's still a lot to look forward to as well from those 2 guys. Dylan Stewart, for me, probably has the highest ceiling.
I'm excited about, you know, that matchup with Kentucky this week. They obviously, for Coach Beamer, didn't play the way they wanted to, but that's an intriguing matchup. I think Deion Walker on the other side, I don't know how much you've watched him, but you want to talk about a load and a guy for his size, man. He's 6'6", 340 plus, and he moves so well, strong, sheds blocks so well. Watching some of his stuff coming into the season, I was unbelievably impressed. So the South Carolina offensive line, they better have it strapped up and be ready, because I think that just the length overall that Kentucky presents, I think that they've got an underrated defensive line in the SEC. I kind of feel like Kentucky's just kind of flying under the radar. We only got a chance to see them for 2 quarters and change against Southern Miss, but I think that defense is going to be really salty, and it starts up front for Coach Stoops' squad.
Yeah, I did a video earlier during the summer about Deion Walker. I thought he was the best interior defensive lineman in college football. I mean, there's no way that a guy at 6'5", 350 should be having 50-plus tackles and 5-plus sacks. This is a guy that should be eating double teams day in and day out. This isn't supposed to be an athletic guy that is unbelievable with his hands. His pad length does need to dip down some, and he's going to work on that a lot as the season progresses. If he can get all that situated, if he can be more of a presence in the run game as well, this guy is a solidified top 32 pick in next year's upcoming draft, dude. I mean, you don't see this type of talent come through at that type of height and weight. That's a guy that NFL GMs are going to be licking their chops over. And in particular, if he falls down that low, if the Rams can pick up somebody like that, not only do they have Verse, not only do they have Ethan Burke from Florida State, if you get a guy like that in the middle, dude, you just imagine the type of mismatch that it would be when he's lined up in that one or straight up nose.
He can play really, all along the front. I mean, you could play him as a nose. You could play him over a guard. I don't think you want to move him too far outside, but he's got the length that he could play a 4-eye for you if you needed to. And I think for a guy his size, just the athleticism. I mean, the strength is there, the punch shed, but he's a big-time football player that I know Kentucky fans know about. I'd say some SEC fans, but around the country, they don't really know. So 3:30, the SEC on ABC, I think that they're doing a great job promoting that. That's a big marquee opportunity, I think, for both South Carolina and Kentucky. But for a guy like Deion Walker, who maybe doesn't get the notoriety around the country, it's a big opportunity this Saturday, middle of the day, for him to shine and step up and show that he is one of the most dominant defensive tackles in all of college football.
Talk to me about this Arkansas defense going up against the run game of Oklahoma State. I know that their front four and their defense has improved greatly over the last 2 years since Travis Williams came in and took over after what was basically a broken defense that he inherited this past offseason. And he comes in and completely revitalizes it, turns Landon Jackson into what could be a top 32 pick as well, and among some other big-time stars that could be on there. Talk to me about that matchup going in and how this could be a trench warfare, and that could decide Sam Pittman's fate near the near future.
Yeah, you look, Travis Williams has been fantastic. He came in from UCF, and I'm a big Barry Odom fan. I think Barry's done a great job at UNLV. We saw that last season. They get knocked off Houston this week, so I'm happy and rooting for Barry. But, they dealt with a lot of injuries his last year there at Arkansas, but the defense really took a big dip. And since Travis has stepped in, they were one of the most improved defenses you'll find anywhere in the country last season. They got to remake the linebacker spot, but up front, Landon Jackson, obviously, as we've touched on, that's where it starts. One thing that impresses me about Jackson, obviously that length, that size, that strength that you see, but he's got a great motor. The dude never stops. He keeps coming, and he's just continued to get better and better and better. So I'm a big fan of his. I think he's got a chance to play his way as a first-round draft pick throughout the course of the season. But guys that pop to me, man, Eric Gregory up front, Cameron Ball, both these guys are 320-plus on the interior, move laterally really well, and I just thought they create a lot of havoc. Now, again, I want to preface just Arkansas Pine Bluff was not very good, so it's hard sometimes to gauge what am I looking at. But when you see a guy step laterally and then be able to get vertically very quickly, it doesn't matter who you're going against. You can see some of those things jump off a tape. And I thought that from that standpoint, it was good. Also, a player that I didn't know a whole lot about, Nico Davier, 0 for Arkansas. He really popped to me, and he's a big defensive end, every bit of 270. He was very active, very strong with his sheds, getting off of blocks and creating a lot of negative plays. And, they're retooling a lot of the linebacking core, a lot of the back end of the defense. But Travis Williams has shown the ability to be able to get the most out of players. They look good in the opener. I can't wait to see them against Oklahoma State. Again, Oklahoma State, they've got so much veteran presence all across this offense. The offensive line in particular, I mean, they've got 7 guys with starting experience on this offensive line. They don't just have front-level players with experience and talent. They've got legitimate depth, and I think it's going to be a heck of a matchup. Alan Bowman at quarterback, he does not get sacked much. You know, he's a seventh-year guy who's been in college football forever, but he's got a quick release. Like, the offensive line does a good job, and then when he does it, does a really good job at different arm angles, just being able to get the ball out. So, you know, I think that obviously the key with Oklahoma State, though, I mean, it's Ollie Gordon, right? And can this defense, can they make them one-dimensional without having to load up? Because here's the thing against Oklahoma State. If you load up and you want to bring that extra safety down and you want to say we're taking away the run, they got legit dudes outside. I mean, they got DeJon Stribling, who's back from injury, who's got size and really can go up and make plays. Rashad Owens, really strong hands, a thick wide receiver. And then Brendan Presley out of the slot, who, again, fifth-year senior, who's been playing football there forever. Like, they can win one-on-ones. If they go man-to-man, they're going to take their shots, and they're going to try to beat you out there on the perimeter. So can Arkansas limit and slow down Ollie Gordon with a light box, and can that defensive line win up front? I think it's going to be a huge factor and a big key, not just throughout the course of the season, but primarily right here in this matchup in Stillwater on Saturday.
How about the grudge match between Bobby Petrino and Oklahoma State's defense? How do you think that that Taylon Green will perform, you know, just coming off of the game that he had? And like you mentioned, and like we already have mentioned several times this week, I know it's Arkansas Pine Bluff, but 10 touchdowns on 10 possessions is unbelievable. And how Bobby Petrino called that game and how he's been doing it over the course of his career is nothing short of just terrific play calling, and it comes with experience. So how do you think that he'll adjust and how he'll get Taylon Green into a groove going up against a stingy Oklahoma State defense?
First of all, it's tough to do that on air, okay? Like scoring 10 touchdowns in 10 possessions. So you got to give credit where credit's due. I mean, I go back to, again, talk about Taylon Green, talk about Jaquindon Jackson, who came in at running back from Utah, who's an excellent player. But I think it's about the offensive line, man. Like, that was the problem for Arkansas a year ago. And I think that bringing in Eric Mateos from Baylor, a guy who learned under Sam Pittman when he was a graduate assistant for Sam Pittman there at Arkansas, is absolutely huge. You hit the portal, you address the offensive line, and I'm intrigued to see how those guys look against another Power 4 defensive front. Oklahoma State's got an edge guy in Colin Oliver. He's a stand-up. He's listed as a linebacker, but he's really a stand-up defensive end, outside edge. He's got an explosive first step, really natural bender off the edge. That's going to really challenge these tackles for Arkansas. So I'm intrigued to see how they handle that throughout the course of this matchup. I like what I see from Taylon Green. He's a guy who led Boise State to a Mountain West Conference championship last year in the midst of their coach being fired down the stretch of their season when Spencer Danielson stepped in. You know, he really had to step up and play his best ball down the stretch. I think that gave him a lot of confidence, and you saw that in the first game. And Bobby Petrino, he is a wizard at putting his players in the right position to have success. And what I like for Taylon Green in this one is they did a lot of stuff, move the pocket, boot action, get him out of the perimeter, run pass options. I think he's very comfortable whenever he's out there, can really see the field, and he just has that ability to throw the football on the move, off schedule. And then obviously when he tucks it and goes, I mean, he's scary, man. Dude's got a stride. He's 6'6", 230. He's got great vision in the open field. Now, he is far from the credentials of a guy I played against in Vince Young, but I played against VY in 2005. And when you watch the way Taylon just moves and that stride that he has, and when he hits the open field, it kind of reminds you of Vince. And I think that Bobby Petrino is going to continue to put him in good situations. And I think that it's going to be a really good marriage. I also like the tight ends for Arkansas. I think, you know, they got a lot of 12 personnel, one back, two tights. They utilize those tight ends. I think they'll continue to. Luke has outside, Ty Washington. And they played probably 3-4 different tight ends throughout the course of that game. And I really liked it when they get in their 12 personnel. But Jaquindon Jackson, man, I think that that's kind of the key for Taylon Green. If they can get downhill with some of the different gap scheme stuff that they were doing in this opener, and they can get him rolling. I mean, he's a big back out of Utah. He's 6'2", 230, 235. I mean, he runs with power. He runs with speed. And if they can get him going and they can force defenses, to get into some man-to-man stuff, and you run man against Taylor Green, I think you're going to be in for a rude awakening. So I like what I saw in the opener. I can't wait to see in this game. One thing about Oklahoma State defensively, they've given up a lot of explosive plays. So I look for Bobby Petrino to really try to exploit that and create some explosives here in this matchup on Saturday.
Yeah, they gave up over almost 400 yards of total offense last week to South Dakota State. And another thing on Jaquindon Jackson, if you put a backer out on him, that's just a mismatch all the way. I mean, he's too shifty of a back to be able to be caught up in those one-on-one situations like you mentioned already, Dusty. Dusty Dvoracek joining us here on SEC Unfiltered, talking all things Arkansas and Oklahoma State, as well as some of the top defensive lines in the SEC. Want to give a shout out to our good friends over at GameTime. Download the GameTime app and use code SECU for $20 off of your first purchase. GameTime has your back whenever you buy on GameTime. Your tickets are on time and authentic, guaranteed, with lower fees, better prices, and made for your mobile app. So download the GameTime app on your Android or Apple device and use code SECU for $20 off of your first purchase. Dusty, you played with some of the greats on that defensive line. You played with Tommy Harris. You played with Teddy Lehman, who was an outstanding linebacker, Derek Strait, who won the Jim Thorpe Award. Who are some guys that are around the SEC that kind of not necessarily are just like those respective guys, but have those same qualities and traits as those guys respectively?
Well, since you're talking about my teammates, I'll keep it here close to home. I think Danny Stutzman is primed for a massive year at Oklahoma. His leadership, his energy. I mean, he is playing fast right now. Year 3 in this Brent Venables defense. He's big. He's bigger than Teddy Lehman. Now, Teddy was more about speed. Danny's got more size, but I think that as a blitzer, Danny Stutzman is going to be an absolute problem. And I love what I'm seeing from him. Last couple of years, he's been great. Creates a lot of negative plays, but I think that this year he's going to have a chance to have a special type season. Just being in Alabama, man, I like their backers, if I'm being completely honest. Like, I think Deontay Lawson, he is physical. He's a good tackler. And I thought Jahad Campbell, he looked faster to me, man. He was rolling. He was absolutely running sideline to sideline, making plays. I think both of those guys for Kane Womack got a chance to be really, really good players. So, look, the SEC is littered with great players. I also play with a great defensive end, Dan Cody, who was up for the Thorpe Award. I've already touched on James Pierce Jr., who will be in Norman here in a couple of weeks. I think that he is the creme de la creme when it comes to pure, natural edge rushers that got that first step ability, that have that. And I thought he's got the long arm. He's got the dip. He can come back inside. He's created a nice little counter. He's just smooth out there. So I expect him to have pick up right where we left off from last year and have a great year. I also really like Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M. Different style. He's just different body type. He's big, physical. I think he's outstanding in the run game. But I think he's a pure power rusher out there on the edge. I just think he's going to give a lot of people a lot of issues throughout the course of the season. So, there's defensive players littered throughout the SEC. Week 1, I didn't see a better defensive player in the SEC than Jalen Walker, though. I thought Jalen Walker at Georgia, what he was able to do setting some of those edges against Clemson, I love what I saw from him. And we saw a little bit from him last year. He just seems like he is primed, ready to have a massive season there for the Bulldogs. He might wind up being one of the premier, if not the premier defensive player in this league. I do something. I host a show on SiriusXM with Danny Cannell in the mornings on College Sports Radio. And every Tuesday I give my 3D awards, Dusty's Dominant Defenders. And he came in second for me as far as best defensive players and that I watched, that I observed throughout the course of week 1. So I'd say Jalen Walker for me. He's got my attention. I think he's got the attention of opposing offensive line coaches and coordinators all across the country and all across the SEC.
And I'll bring mine that's closer to y'all's home. Y'all have Bauer Sharp, who's primed for an unbelievable season at tight end. He came from where I'm at right now, Southeastern. When this dude is an unbelievable tight end. You can put him anywhere. You put him in wildcat formation on 3rd and 4th and short. We utilized him a lot on those 4 packages last year. And when you put him out into the edge and near the goal line, I mean, he's just unbelievable for what his size and strength brings. Another guy that's closer to home for me, especially that doesn't really get talked about on the defensive side of the ball as much. Savion Jones had a hell of a game against Sunday against USC. 2 sacks and a handful of tackles, and arguably what could have been the play of the game, that batted pass on 4th down. He could be primed for a breakout season. And a lot of people were hard on him after what happened last year, just with everything that LSU had with how their defense performs and so on and so forth. And Savion Jones kind of got caught in the middle and was like, whoa, maybe he really shouldn't be starting. Maybe we should be starting guys like Deshaun Womack or any other defensive lineman. And when you have a guy like that, you basically have secured a spot for now. And if you just keep on with that performance, you could be heading yourself for an all-SEC type performance. I mean, he's huge for a guy that's playing in that 5-tech defensive line position. I think majority of that defensive line has put on a lot of weight. Parashan's put on about 30 pounds since last offseason. Jones has put on about 25, and I think Harold Perkins has put on about 15 to 20 as well since the last offseason. So these guys are faster. These guys are stronger, and you could tell that was the case after you saw what happened on Sunday as well.
That was a great game. I give it up to USC. I know not necessarily SEC side of things, but, Danton Lynn, I did a UCLA game last year late in the season. And
he called a great game.
He is a big-time coordinator, man. I mean, structurally, fundamentally sound, guys that tackle. I thought the USC tackling was so much improved. And, they just did a really good job of giving up some underneath stuff, but tackling, and then when they had to, getting stops. I also thought Blake Baker's squad looked better. Like, to your point about LSU, for the majority of that game, they did a good job containing USC. Miller Moss able to get, just do a little bit too much there at the end of the football game. But I get that LSU fans are probably frustrated. That's a game that you felt like you were going to win. That's a game that, big marquee matchup. I love what I saw from Nussmeier. Hate the news about the running back that tears his ACL earlier this week. But I love the offensive line. I think that the defense, you can tell the improvement that they've had. It's not fully fixed, but they're heading in the right direction. You're going to have to play some young guys on the back end of that defense. I think throughout the course of the season, they're going to get better and better. Nobody likes to lose the opener, and it's been a minute. 2019 since LSU's won an opener, but I still think the Tigers got a chance to have a nice season, and I agree with you. Savion Jones, man, he was big time for LSU, and they're going to need him to be because they need that. That was the one area I did their spring game, and Brian Kelly was concerned about that front. And so for him to step up and have that kind of opener, it's going to give him a lot of confidence moving forward.
Dusty, a couple more questions for you before we let you go, man. We appreciate you taking the time to come join us and talk a little college football. This upcoming game that you'll be calling, another guy that I got to witness and play against is Andrew Armstrong. I called him probably the most underrated receiver in the SEC. I saw what he did at Texas A&M Commerce, and he burns opposing defensive backs. I think he's 6'6" and 230+ pounds playing receiver. I mean, this guy is a man amongst boys. I kind of went overboard whenever I first saw him a couple of years ago. I called him the next Randy Moss. But the way that he plays kind of reminds me of '84 whenever he was playing for the Vikings. And whenever I see him, whenever you line up against him, I mean, this guy is just going to beat you off the first step. And he's still got a lot to improve with his footwork and with jump balls. But, I mean, when you get an electric receiver like that for Taylon Green to throw to, it really elevates your offense and gives Bobby Petrino a weapon that he can utilize in any sort of form as well.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to play. He didn't play in the opener. He's got a hamstring. I don't know. I don't know what his status is for this Oklahoma State game. I hope we get a chance to see him. I know he's a dynamic player, but he was not one of the main targets. Tyrone Broden, 6'7" wide receiver. He was a guy that was featured. Jordan Anthony, another little slot, smaller in size. They even had the 29-year-old Monte Harrison, who's come over from baseball now to come back and play some football again. But I think Isaac Taslaw as well, another 6'4" receiver. They've got size out there on the perimeter. I just don't know. I'm sure if Armstrong's able to go, he obviously helps them. I'm not sure right now. We meet with the Arkansas staff tomorrow. I'm not sure what his status is going to be, but clearly you want all hands on deck, and I would imagine Coach Pittman going to keep that close to the vest. But they've got multiple receivers over 6'4" with or without Armstrong, and they're going to try to utilize that size to their advantage. And I really think, man, just Luke has. That's a name that I would just say stick behind your ear. Remember, he got hurt early last season. He had a great start to the year as a freshman. He's an Oklahoma kid out of Bixby. They're in the Tulsa area. They got a great high school program. Got some toughness to him, good in the block game, really good in the pass game. I think that as the season progresses, some of the play action stuff they do, even move the pocket, he's going to be one of the top targets, I think, for this offense in the throw game.
Dusty, last question for you before we let you go. Has the Arkansas Fayetteville started to, if they win this upcoming Saturday, which I have them on upset alert, I do think that they could pull it off in Stillwater. Do you think that Arkansas fans would start to forgive Bobby Petrino of his past, or is the tension still high, do you think?
I mean, look, it's a step in the right direction. They had a bad season last year, 4-8. What was interesting about last season, the road games that they had, they were super competitive in. I believe they go to Baton Rouge, lose by 3. Yep. Go to Oxford, lose by 7. I was there in Tuscaloosa, they lose by 3. They went in the swamp last season. Like, really, their woes were in Fayetteville. So for whatever reason, at least last year, in the worst year since Pittman's been there, they were good on the road. I expect they're going to be good and ready to play on Saturday. Does a win in Stillwater, does it, completely change the narrative? It starts to. I think it starts to get you some credibility with the fan base, but I think that it's going to come throughout the course of the season. And I think especially how you perform at home in front of your crowd there in Fayetteville. I believe Sam Pittman, he's going off of embrace the hog this year. That's kind of their mantra. It's kind of their mindset. So when they get a chance to be in their backyard, I think it's important that they perform well. But, going on the road against a number 16 team in the country, if you get a win, it's a massive step in the right direction. So I'm looking forward to Saturday. I think it's going to be a great matchup. I think that, both these teams feel like there's probably areas that they can exploit and take advantage of. And I can't wait to see how this thing plays out. It's going to be fun.
The Coach Hogs against the veterans of Oklahoma State. Catch Dusty this upcoming Saturday on ESPN, correct?
No, we're on ABC.
Okay,
8
awesome.
Eastern, 11 Central.
Sweet. Check them there. The SEC on ABC this upcoming Saturday. Oklahoma State and Arkansas should be a fun one. Dusty Dvoracek, ESPN's college football analyst. Where can we find you on social media, brother? And where else are you at as well?
You can find me at Dusty Dvoracek, Call Games, ESPN, ABC with my partner, Dave Pash. 4 years in the booth with him. He's one of the absolute best. Taylor McGregor on the sidelines with us. I host on SiriusXM College Sports Radio, 6 to 9 Eastern. Danny Cannell and I, Monday through Friday. So plenty of places you can check me out, man. Appreciate you guys having me here today on SEC Unfiltered.
Absolutely, Dusty. We hope that the broadcast goes well this weekend, and we appreciate you taking the time, my brother.
All right, thanks, man.